Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Lorraine Garcia, Communications Specialist here at Coachella Valley Water District, and I'm happy to welcome you to our Caring for Citrus Trees Workshop Part 2. I also wanted to quickly recognize our questions moderator, Stephanie. She will be helping our speaker at the end of the presentation to address all questions. So if you have any questions during this presentation, please use the questions panel that should be on the right-hand side of your screen. And we have a picture here for you to see what it looks like if it's not on your screen. And there's also a handouts section where I will be uploading some handouts as well. And there's a chat box where we'll be sending you information, or you can send us a chat. So now let's get started and learn about our speaker. Don is the Water Management Supervisor for Coachella Valley Water District. His primary responsibility is to provide technical support for efficient water use throughout the district. He works with residential, commercial, and recreational water users to improve their water-efficient landscape irrigation practices. Before coming to CVWD, he served as the Mobile Lab Team Leader for Coachella Valley Resource Conservation District, where he led more than 600 agricultural and urban irrigation system audits. He has also taught turf grass management and landscape irrigation certification programs at the University of California, Riverside and its extension. He was also an adjunct agriculture professor at College of the Desert. Combined, Don has a total of 33 years of experience in irrigation education at the college level. Please welcome Mr. Don Ackley.
Good morning. Welcome back to all of you who attended Part 1, and welcome to those who are just attending Part 2. Part 1 had to do with what kind of citrus trees grow well here in the valley, how to pick one out at the nursery, and then how to plant it properly. So you've done all these things and you've got your tree and it's in its proper place. And now it's time to grow the tree. So what we're going to cover in Part 2 are cultural practices. And again, a quick disclaimer that in order to get a degree in fruit production at Cal Poly, you're required to take 120 hours of college-level citrus courses. And which I did, but there's no way that I can condense those 120 hours into 90 minutes, or in this case, 60 minutes. But I can cover the highlights. And I want to point out again, especially for those who are new, that more extensive general citrus growing knowledge can be obtained by going to our website, cvwd.org, and then accessing our supplemental information from our previous presentation. It gives you how to do it, and I believe there's a link further on in the presentation towards the end where you can get more detailed information on the things that I'm going to talk about today. And then another reminder is that questions will be answered the last 10 minutes of our hour that we're allotted to do this program. Okay, so citrus care for the low desert residential landscape grower. The things that we're going to concentrate on are minimize pruning. The nice thing about citrus trees is unlike almost every other type of fruit that we grow, there's minimal pruning going on. So there's just a few things that you have to do. But unlike grapes or peaches or pears or apples, it's very, very minimal. Basically, it's cleaning up. Then we need to, especially here in the desert, we need to protect the trunk. By protecting the trunk, I mean from sunburn. And that's especially important here in the desert because we've got an awful lot of sun. So we need to talk about that. And then fertilization and irrigation. And these are courses in themselves, but I can give you the basics and the shortcuts on how to do these. You can get more information rather on this in the supplemental handouts. And then finally, pest control. We have a number of pests here in the valley, and we can still get frost. Hopefully, we won't get anything like Texas had last week, but there's still clear danger of frost here, basically from Thanksgiving through the end of February. And it's possible to get some frost in March. So it can happen. And even with global warming, we're by no means immune from a cold front coming down and freezing all our plants. So we'll get started. Minimize pruning. There's really not a lot of pruning to do for citrus trees except for cleaning up. But you can't train them. So what you see in the picture there are peaches. And you see they have a kind of a vase, scaffold underneath the foliage and flowers there. And it's all spread out. Your citrus tree is not going to look like this. And even if you pruned it to be like this, in a very short time, it would revert back to its natural shape. You can't train or shape citrus trees. So, I have a new word for you. I turned you in, I defined alternate bearing last time, where the tree gives a lot of fruit one year, and the next year hardly gives you any at all. So probably alternate bearing is a new word for you. So now we have the second new word, which is apical dominance. So what apical dominance means is that the top bud on the tree rules and dominates all the buds below the tree. So I'll get into a minute why the fruit cocktail tree usually fails. But it gets to the top of the tree, and its top bud, dominates all the branches and everybody below it. Doesn't mean they don't grow, but the top one, the leader with the highest bud, dominates. Well, what happens is that bud grows straight up, and then because it's soft wood, it starts to bend over. And as it bends over, pretty soon the bud in the middle is now the top bud, and the top bud has folded over. And so the bud in the middle of the branch, which is now the apex, or the highest bud, it starts growing. And you get another branch, and it grows up, and then it gets to a certain height, and it starts to bend over. And when it bends over, the top bud on the bough goes and takes over. So this happens over and over again. So the citrus tree doesn't hold its shape. So pruning it to be like a peach tree only works for a month after you've pruned it that way, and then it reverts back. It's really kind of like a growing bush. So let's take a minute and talk about the fruit cocktail tree, which you may or may not have heard of. We talked last time about how you bud the rootstock with budwood from the scion, which is the bearing part of the tree. Well, you can do that with more than one branch. So let's say a fruit cocktail tree would be you bud one orange and one lemon and one grapefruit, all on the same rootstock. So you have one branch going out and it's lemon, another one's an orange, and another one's a grapefruit. And so that's kind of a conversation piece, and people out in your backyard or you're out there and say, oh, come look at my fruit cocktail tree. Look, I got different fruit on different branches. And again, it starts out that way. But what happens is because we're grafting three different branches, one of them is more compatible with the rootstock than the other. And it grows more vigorously. And pretty soon its bud gets higher then let's say it's a grapefruit. And the grapefruit takes off and gets ahead of the the orange and the lemon. And it keeps growing and getting all the water, all the fertilizer. It starts to shade out the others. And the others shrink, and that one on the top dominates. And pretty soon you end up with a grapefruit tree. So if you want to try to grow the fruit cocktail tree, this is the trick. You can't let one of the scions get taller than the other. So the one that takes off and starts growing higher than the others, you go in there and you cut it. So all three of them are the same height. And you'll have to do this more than once because that one is going to try to dominate. And so what you want to do is not let it dominate and give the other two a chance. So if you keep all of them at the same height above the ground and not let one of them get higher than the other, then they will all grow, right? And that's also why it is so hard to shape a citrus tree, is because apical dominance and one branch gets to dominate all the others, and then it loses its shape. So you don't have to worry about pruning to train because it just doesn't work. What does happen though is you get rootstock suckers, and what they are, I'll show you a picture in a minute, are branches, shoots that shoot out from the rootstock below the bud union. And those do not produce fruit, and you want to remove those. There are also scion suckers, which are suckers that on the scion start growing inside the tree. And if they start growing, don't cut them off because those are potentially bearing fruit. But what you do is reach in and pull it out towards the side of the canopy. So it's not growing straight up. It's out there on the side, and if you're lucky, you'll get some fruit from those. Third thing is leave as much green wood on the tree as possible. The skirt of the canopy should touch the ground. No lollipops. And I'll show you a picture of a lollipop in a minute. The big pruning task is deadwood, broken branches, and crossover. Those should be removed. Probably every 6 months you should go in there and prune the dead stuff out. If you leave it there, I'll show you pictures of it, and the wind blows and the fruit rubs against that dead wood, it will scar and open up the skin of the fruit and leave it open to pathogens. So we want it clean, no dead wood inside the canopy. Finally, another trick, if you have to cut green wood, particularly for crossover, then after you've cut it, so let's say that my hand is a branch and it's crossing over another branch and they're rubbing against each other, which we don't want to happen because it'll rub the skin off, and then pathogens and insects have a open door to get inside the tree and cause you problems. So what you used to do is put tree seal on it, like a tar-like substance that you would paint over a big cut. But instead, use silver duct tape. And so when you go down to Lowe's or Home Depot or Ace or whoever, you can get duct tape that's almost 3 inches wide. And what you do is, if I cut the branch, and so my fist is where I made the cut, I take a strip of the duct tape and put it over the top, and then wrap some around it. So it's basically completely sealed. And when you do that, it holds the moisture in there. It keeps anything from getting inside and invading the tree. And it is light, unlike black tree seal. Duct tape, silver duct tape is light, and so it reflects heat, where the tree seal itself, being black, absorbs heat. So what happens is you put that on the tree. So you put a big bandage over the big cuts. Big cuts to me are like 1 inch and higher and wider. And you wait a year, and then you remove it, and you'll find that the tree is callousing over that cut you made, and will eventually completely cover it up and begin to conduct nutrients and water up and down. So people look at you like what are you doing? You're bandaging the tree. But it works. It's a trick I picked up from people who do bonsai. They do very intricate pruning, and they can't stand those white cuts, those little cuts. And so they cover it with duct tape, and it calluses over, and the tree skin is intact. So let's look at some of this stuff. Okay, these are rootstock suckers. If you see there in the bud union, which is right there, you've got these shoots coming up below. And look at the thorns. That's how you're going to tell that this is a scion, which remember is a wild citrus and has a lot of thorns on it to protect itself because nobody's out there doing pest control. So they're also part of the original rootstock, so they grow better than the scion. So if you don't remove these, then it takes over the tree. And it grows up, and pretty soon it's higher than the tree. And then we'll have apical dominance coming in, but it'll be rootstock apical dominance. And under those circumstances, you'll lose your tree, you'll just have a rootstock. So you want to take those off. You can sometimes just pull it, and it will pop right out of where it's coming out. Or you can just prune it very, very closely to the trunk. Right, this is a lollipop. Lollipop citrus trees. You don't want your citrus trees to look like this. You are reducing about 1/3 of your bearing area, and you're opening up the trunk to sunburn. So your citrus tree should not look like this. You should let the skirt go all the way down and touch the ground. And when you do that, you've increased your bearing area by about 3 feet. And also, that fruit will be easily picked by hand, and you won't need a ladder or something to pick the top fruit. I mean, you still will, but you half your stuff, you can just walk up to the tree and pull it off. So we want a full skirt touching the ground, also protecting from sunburn. Crossover. Okay, this is the same tree. This is what happens when you don't address crossover. Crossover is in the citrus tree, inside the canopy. It's a big competition, a race for sunlight. So branches take off all over the place inside the tree. And sometimes they cross over each other. And when they do that, the bark is hitting like this very center of this tree right here. And when the wind blows, they rub against each other and rub the bark off and open up the tree to potential invasion by diseases or insects. So no crossover. So what you need to do, preferably when the tree is young and the branches are small, but you look inside the canopy and you see 2 branches touching each other, then you need to prune one of them. No crossover. And no deadwood. This is what happens to the losers who are trying to find some sunlight. So you got all these branches inside the canopy, and they're all trying to find some sunlight for their leaves. And so they grow all over the place. And some of them find sunlight and some of them don't. And the ones that don't lose their leaves, and that wood dies. And you see an example of it right in front of you on the center of the tree. So that's deadwood. and it's not going to bear, but most importantly, again, that rind or the skin of the fruit is very susceptible to abrasion. So again, the wind blows, fruit moves back and forth, rubs up against this dead wood, opens up the skin of the fruit to pathogens and insects. So you need to get in there probably twice a year and prune that dead wood out so that it's clean inside of the canopy of your tree. All right, moving on, protect the trunk. Citrus trees are believed to have evolved as under canopy trees. So in jungle climates, you have the main trees, the tall trees that shoot way up there in the sky. And citrus doesn't do that. Citrus is under canopy, which means it's protected from, in its natural state, the way it was evolved, it was protected from direct sunlight. So it's susceptible to sunburn. And especially on the west and south side of your tree, you will see it looks like sunburn. The bark almost looks like it's blistered, and it turns a reddish color. And underneath the bark, directly under the bark, is what we call the cambium layer, and that's the conducting tissues. The xylem, which takes stuff up, and the phloem, which takes photosynthate down. So it's not in the center of the tree. It's not in the heartwood. It's just under the bark. So if that gets sunburned, then that cambium layer dies. And the branches directly above it don't get their share of water or photosynthate. So we don't want sunburn. And if it's extreme, it cracks and breaks open, and again, allowing pathogens and insects to get in and make life tough for your tree. Right? So what we do is we use tree wrap on newly planted trees. And again, on the supplemental material called Citrus Fruit for Home Planting, page 8, you'll see an example of tree wrap. You can buy it at the store. The only problem with tree wrap is that it doesn't hug the trunk. It's loosely planted around it to block sunlight. So insects and ants and so on can get in between the tree wrap and the trunk of your tree. So it's worthwhile on your tree to, every couple of months or so, take a peek down and see if anything's taken up residence underneath your tree wrap. And this is just for the smaller trees. Just 2 days ago, I was reading an article about it, and the author recommended that you use tinfoil, heavy-duty tinfoil. Again, we're talking about a single shoot baby tree that you've just purchased and planted, that you wrap the trunk with aluminum foil, heavy-duty. And it will do two things. You'll be able to get it right up close to the trunk. And secondly, it's believed, this is a trick from vegetable gardeners and so on, that insects don't like aluminum. There are people who put aluminum under vegetables that are prone to aphids. And it's hard for them to land. It's disorienting. And so having that during the earlier years of your tree, having tinfoil instead of, also much cheaper, instead of tree wrap, might be a better alternative. On mature trees, especially if someone's gotten in there and made a lollipop out of your tree. People, especially people from up north or back east, are used to trees looking like lollipops. And they come here and they want a lollipop. And so they prune it so you can see the trunk. Now the trunk's susceptible to sunburn. So you paint it. and you paint the trunk into primary scaffolds, which are the first ones to branch out from the trunk, with a white, water-based or latex paint. Very important. Do not use oil-based or enamel because that will seep in under the bark and disrupt your cambium layer. So water-based or latex paint around it. So, oops, there. Okay, so there you see a picture of that. The truck is way down there at the bottom, and you can see the primary scaffold are the three big branches branching off. And then up here on this big one is the secondary scaffold. So I like to paint that high, up through the secondary scaffold with the paint. It also makes a nice contrast to brown bark, green foliage, and then the white in there. So it can also be attractive, but the main thing is that it bounces sunlight off it and it will protect your tree from sunburn. So what you should do is go ahead and protect it. Meanwhile, let the tree grow its canopy back and let the skirt go all the way down to the ground. Okay, irrigating properly. This is probably the most difficult thing for people to do. I've spent my entire career here at the Water District trying to get people to irrigate properly. So again, we don't have time to get into a lot of details, but there's two major basic ways that you irrigate. You flood irrigate, or you irrigate infrequently, but you bomb it when you do it. So you put a whole bunch of water down, you irrigate down to the deepest roots, and then you wait until the top of the soil starts to dry out, and then you bomb it again. In the summer, you're probably doing this once a week, and in the dead of winter, maybe once every 3 weeks or once a month. So if you're using that type of irrigation, you can use basins filled by 2 gallon an hour pressure compensating bubblers. So let me explain this to you a little bit. Bubblers are a way that you flood irrigate, so you would use those 2 bubblers to fill up your basin. Right? Pressure compensating means that no matter what the pressure is in the pipes coming up to the bubblers, they're going to put out an equal pressure and an equal amount of water. So no matter what the pressure is, you're going to get 2 gallons per minute out of that bubbler. So if you have a bubbler on either side, you're putting down 4 gallons a minute. And then you do it basically, you watch it and see how long it takes to get a couple inches of water deep in your basin. And then you just let it go back in, and you don't irrigate again for a week or so. Right? That's one way of irrigating. The way I like to irrigate that way is that you get water all the way down to the deepest roots, and you encourage the roots to grow deeper. So you water deeply, but infrequently, and extend your basin out to the drip line. The drip line is you look at the tree like the canopy is an umbrella. And if it was raining on the umbrella, it would run off to the sides of the umbrella and drip down. And the tree kind of works like this. Of course, some water goes through the tree, but basically the drip line is the edge of the canopy, and that's where most of the roots hang out, because that's where most of the water falls. So you want to irrigate all the way out to that drip line. And again, if you're going to irrigate by bombing it infrequently, then you want to get the water down to 2 feet. 3 feet wouldn't be bad. What you're trying to do is encourage deep roots. Generally, as a rule of thumb here in the desert with our sandy soils, if you put down 1 inch of water in sand, it will penetrate down to 18 inches. So 2 inches of water can get you down to well below 2 feet. Right? Generally, you want to water when the first ½ inch, quarter inch to ½ inch of the soil is dry. So you go out there and you bombed it a week ago, and it's been kind of hot out, and so you're not sure whether you should irrigate again. Just go out there midway between the drip line and the truck, and just take your finger and scrape down. And if it's dry, you might have to irrigate, but if down at ½ inch, it's damp, then you're still okay. So you can wait a couple more days. Right? So that's one way of irrigating. You bomb it, but infrequently and deeply. And I like to irrigate that way because it encourages deep roots. The other method is the gallons per day method, where you irrigate every day, but a much lesser amount of water. So in the supplemental handout is a table telling you for the desert, size of the tree, month of the year, how many gallons per day that your tree needs. So now back up to the first paragraph. If you use drip irrigation or micro sprays, or actually spray head lawn sprinklers under the canopy, and you have to know the flow rate. So bubblers and conventional sprinklers, the flow rate is measured in gallons per minute. But for drip irrigation and micro spray, it is gallons per hour. So if you have 10 drippers and you get 2 gallon an hour emitters, then in 1 hour you will have put down 20 gallons. And so you might have to irrigate for 2 hours to get enough water there, depending on what the table tells you. But remember, drip irrigation is drip irrigation, and what that means is it's just dripping. So it takes a long time for you to drip, a whole hour for you to drip 2 gallons. So you're running that a long time on your clock, but it doesn't translate to a whole lot of water. So one of the key things on irrigation, however you irrigate, whatever you're irrigating, is the irrigation device that actually emits the water. You need to know what the flow rate is. So when you buy your drippers or you buy your compensating bubblers, you can get ½ gallon a minute, gallon a minute, 2 gallons a minute. Drippers, you can get ½ gallon an hour, 1 gallon an hour, 2 gallons an hour. You need to know that, how much water is coming out of your irrigation system before you can irrigate efficiently. Okay, lately, and it's not looking good for this year, we've had these really hot events in the summer. You all know about the wildfires and the high temperatures. I can't remember the exact number, but for almost a whole entire summer, we had temperatures over 100 degrees here in the valley. So that's putting a tremendous demand for water from your trees. And sometimes it's too much. And so the tree does this kind of triage thing. Says, okay, there's not enough water for every leaf on the tree. I'm going to sacrifice a branch and cut its water off and let it die so that the others may live. And during the middle of the drought, in the middle of summer, you could drive around the valley and you could look for trees, and you see that partially defoliated. One branch does not have any leaves on it, and that's the tree going in and saying, okay, there's not enough for everybody, so we're going to make a tough decision here, and we're going to take one of the branches and sacrifice it for the good of the whole. All right? That's a good strategy for the tree, but it's not a great strategy for you, right? Because you don't want a dead branch on your tree. It's not going to give you any fruit, and it looks very unattractive. So when I'm called out or somebody calls in and asks me, half my tree is dying, and I go out there and do a site visit, or now I have them take a picture of the tree and send it to me because of COVID and no more site visits, right? What I see is they're only irrigating a small part of the under canopy of the tree. So what happens is somebody plants a little baby tree and they stick one bubbler 1 foot from the tree and make a little basin, and that's fine and that's perfect, but the tree grows. And it grows and grows, and there's nothing more ridiculous than seeing a tree with an 8-inch trunk being irrigated by a single bubbler 2 feet away. What you need to do is irrigate underneath the canopy. And the first thing that I tell them is that you're not wetting enough of the soil. So looking at the pictures to the right, this is drip irrigated trees. And you see how he's got emitters all the way around under the canopy of the tree. And so that you're wetting the maximum amount of surface area under the canopy, not 2 or 3 things, and having the roots all concentrate under your 2 or 3 emitters, but you have emitters at the minimum, the 4 points of the compass, and around in a circle. On the bottom one, there's many more emitters than that little tree does, but it illustrates doing a pigtail, where you have the drippers every couple of feet, and you just wrap it around in an expanding circle. The reason this one is so big is that they're also irrigating those little trees, those little shrubs rather, underneath the trees. So they got little emitters going there. But take those away, and what you do is you wrap a circle of drippers around the trunk, and then as the tree gets bigger, you expand it out, going round and round in a pigtail, so that all of the area underneath your canopy has got water. And a shortcut to doing that is on the right-hand side of the thing here, where you have what we call a micro spray. These put out anywhere from 6 to 13 gallons per hour. And you put one of these in maybe a half circle on either side of your tree, and it sprays out that 5 or 6 feet. And you can do the same thing with a lawn sprinkler. But remember, this guy here that you're looking at on the right hand of the screen is a micro spray, and it's putting out about 6 gallons per hour. So you have to run that thing for 3 hours to get 18 gallons if it's a 6. Excuse me. The other thing you can do is get a larger nozzle as the tree gets larger. So you start out with a small nozzle and with a small throw radius, and then change it to a bigger nozzle as the tree gets bigger. Right? If you do it, you could do it with garden sprinklers, but remember they put out gallons per minute. So if you put a spray head on either side of the trunk of your tree spraying out, incidentally, I want to emphasize this. You don't want the bud union to get wet. So drippers, you don't have to worry about it. Basins, you make sure that the water doesn't seep up above the bud union. And micro sprays, you make sure it doesn't hit the trunk of the tree. The bud union is continually soaked with water. It gets weak, the bark gets loose, and again, an entry point for pathogens. Okay. Okay, fertilization. I'm going to confess something to you, and it works for me. I think personally that you read all the books and all the recommendations and fertilizer and so on, it's all maximum yield, maximum yield, maximum yield. And that it's all aimed at farmers. They want maximum yield because they'll make more money. However, you're growing this thing in your backyard and fruit for you. So be careful what you wish for. Because if you fertilize for maximum yield, you end up with more citrus fruit than you can eat. So I will confess this with one qualifier. I don't fertilize my citrus trees. None of my citrus trees, I have about 8 of them, has gotten fertilizer in 10 years. And I started doing this with those limes that I planted close to the curb, and the fruit was dropping on the street, causing me headaches, because kids going to school would stomp on them all over the road. It looks like I was trying to fry eggs everywhere. So one thing is I didn't want to cut the tree down. It's not the tree's fault that I planted it in the wrong place. So I thought, well, I'll cut down on yield. I just won't fertilize it, and there'll be less fruit. Happy medium. Except that, if anything, the tree gave me more fruit. It was very frustrating. Like, how can you do this? How can you keep giving me these yields when I'm not giving you anything to eat? But thinking about this, in the long term, citrus trees have been around a lot longer than human beings have been. And plant material has been around a long time. Trees have been around a long time before human beings began to cultivate them and add fertilizer. So how do they eat? Nobody's out there giving them nitrogen or iron or manganese or anything, right? And think about what they do. They send the roots go way out beyond the canopy, and they gather nutrients and they bring them back and pull them up into the tree and make the roots. Make the leaves. And the leaves fall. Now, citrus trees are not like, they're not what we call deciduous. Deciduous trees are like the oak tree or the apple or the pear or something, and they drop their leaves when it gets cold. Citrus trees are evergreens. So the leaves are there all the time, but if you pay attention, they're dropping leaves all the time too. They just don't drop them all at once. But the leaves that were made of nutrients that were 30 feet away from the trunk of the tree are pulled up into the tree, made into leaves, and the leaves fall underneath the canopy. And then they decompose, and that food that was 30 feet, 20 feet away from the tree is now under the canopy and ready to be eaten up. So when I say I don't fertilize commercial fertilizer on my trees, I also don't wake the leaves. And so the leaves are the mulch for me underneath my citrus trees. And if it's a landscape and it's in the front yard, it is not particularly attractive. You might not want to do this. But I don't do that. I do that. So nitrogen, you want to use a citrus fertilizer, one that says citrus on it. It's not the best way to do it, but you can optimize your fertilizer if you take a course in it and learn all about nitrogen, iron, manganese, etc. But the citrus people have already done this for you. It's more money, but you don't have to worry about reading the thing. So you want to have iron, nitrogen, iron, manganese, and zinc. Want to fertilize 3 times a year at the dose recommended on the label. You sprinkle it around, under the canopy as directed. Water in immediately. You don't want to leave fertilizer laying on the surface. It will volatilize and you lose half your nutrients. I like to cover mine with a little mulch so that the sun is not hitting any of my fertilizer. I don't work it into the soil because that disturbs the roots. Lastly, don't plant into lush turf grass. It will steal your fertilizer. You want to mulch to the drip line. So this is what I mean by citrus fertilizers. Okay, they've got those things that I mentioned. This is a fertilizer label. We give a whole lecture on the label. But when you go in there on that, you see three big numbers. In this case, they're not very big. It's the 4-10-10. All fertilizer bags, regardless of that, have that. That's called the primary nutrients, the ones that your plants need the most of. It stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And all fertilizer bags have that label on them. Sometimes it's 0, but it's on it. Then you see the iron, the zinc, and the sulfur. And where it says guaranteed analysis, you can see, okay, they got potash, they've got, which is potassium, iron, sulfur, zinc. In this particular case, they don't have the manganese. But at any rate, so you see the big numbers, the big three numbers, big bold print on your fertilizer bag. And then when you read down underneath it, it will also say, we've got iron, we've also zinc, and etc. So that's where you find it. But if you just buy a citrus fertilizer, you got nothing to it. All right. Here's why you don't plant in grass. All right. See those trees? That's classic nitrogen fertilizer deficiency. And you see that nice lush turf grass underneath it. Well, the trees and the grass fight each other. They're always fighting for nutrients. And the tree fights with shade. So it cuts off sunlight. But the grass gets first call on the water and the nutrients, because it's got to go past the grass to get to the roots of the tree. So the combination does not mix very well. Here's a tree with proper colored foliage, and you notice it has no competition underneath. There's no turf grass there, etc. If you want to plant your citrus tree in the lawn, that's fine, but mulch it out to the drip line. All right, we're coming really close here to question and answer time. So there's a number of diseases and a number of pests, and we could spend 15 minutes on each one. So again, citrus fruit for home planting, page 14, we'll talk to you about diseases. There's also a handout on Wang Ming, which is a disease that the valley's quarantined for because it's death to all citrus trees. So there's a handout there that tells how you can check and see if your tree is carrying that disease. And then page 16 is insect and mite control. And my pesticide is called neem oil. And that's a very fine oil extract that I spray for diseases and insects. I got mine at Moeller's Nursery carries it. That's the first place I looked at, and it was there. But you can go online and order it too. And then page 10 is home planting for frost control, and page 16 and 17 is frost damage. So let me show you in the next 3 minutes. Here's a common disease called Rio Grande gamosis, and it's got this gum. You see it real prominent on the center photo there. So you see the gum coming out of the tree. It's hard to control, but there's a method that's described in citrus for home planting. This is another disease called exocortis. And you can see there that it's doing a number at the base of the tree and not the scions down on the rootstock. And then thrips make this little mark here on the citrus tree, and that's mostly cosmetic damage, but it can do a number on the leaves. Spider mites, if you suspect them, you can usually see the little webs on the left-hand side, and if they get out of control, they can turn your fruit black by sucking the stuff out of the skin of the fruit. Lastly, frost damage. Looks like you're looking at Texas right now. Right? There's a number of ways to control it. One is to wrap you, if it's a small enough tree, in a blanket. Don't cover it with plastic because it conducts cold. And there's also frost blankets that you can buy. Also, you can use an outdoor light, floodlight, incandescent at the base of your tree and shine it over it. Or if you can find them, incandescent Christmas tree lights wrapped around your tree will protect from frost. Finally, on harvest, don't let your fruit go year to year to year. When you're done harvesting, you got fruit left over, take it off the tree because it will reduce in the harvest. Wear soft gloves when harvesting because your fingernails will pierce the rind. And if the fruit doesn't pull off easily, clip it and cut it. Don't just pull it off because it will pull part of the skin off. Okay. You can get a hold of me if you have questions there. And is that it?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions coming in if you'd like to go over them.
Okay, you bet.
Okay, so the first one is, my improved Meyer lemon has produced some irregular looking lemons. They are large and have a bumpy texture. Why did this happen? I live in Hemet.
Oh. It sounds like it might be a virus. Look and see in that handout on citrus where it lists diseases. If you can't find anything, give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll do a little research and think. I think the misshapen fruit could be a virus in there.
Thank you, Don. We'll let her know. Okay, what are the best months for pruning?
You don't want to prune in the fall because the tree's response to pruning is to send out new little shoots. And they're very frost vulnerable. So generally late spring after danger of frost is the best time to do it. And because you don't want to do it in the dead of summer and then allow sunlight into the interior of the tree. So very early spring after danger of frost.
Thank you. Okay, Gary asks, I use 666 spikes and add 2100 to get some green. Is that a good strategy?
Is it working? If it's working, the watchword is if it's broke, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So tree spikes are good. I would probably put one down very close to my irrigation device and maybe at the 4 points of the compass, halfway between the trunk and the drip line.
Great. Any comments on fruit rats?
On what?
Fruit rats, maybe eating the fruit off the tree, the rats. Just do you have any comments about them?
That is a problem, and one of the problems is, especially in the spring on lemons, they strip the bark from your tree. In the spring, the movement inside the sap of the tree, right in that cambium layer, is promoting leaf growth. So there's a lot of flow there, and the bark is soft, and they like to eat that, and you can try to cover up the damage. Tree rats are a real problem. That probably what I would do is I would call the Ag Commissioner's office at County of Riverside, and they will come out with a poison for the rats. But if you got dogs out there, which I have, I don't want poison rats that my dog would eat it. Thing. So the way, and it only works a couple times, is what we call pre-baiting. So you get whatever trap you want, and you put it out there, but you don't set it. And you put some cheese or peanut butter or something, and the old rats will send a young rat in there to eat it to see if anything happens to him. And if he doesn't, then the rest of them will eat, and pretty soon they'll ignore the trap. Rats are very, very suspicious of new things in their environment, so you kind of gotta feed them a little bit. But after a while, they'll get careless, just like we do, and then you set the trap. And then, of course, you'll get one or two rats, and then the rest of them will avoid it like the plague. It's a difficult problem. I've never found any solution that lasts. Ag Commissioner's Office is the Sheriff's Policeman, County of Riverside, and they do pest control, and they may have some insights that I don't have.
Those are great tips. That's perfect. Here's just a couple more questions. I missed what you said about picking fruit. Should we remove all of the fruit?
There's also in the handouts, there's a chart on when your fruit is ripe and ready to be picked. And so I'm just going to say, let's just say that your fruit is ripe between October and December. And that's when you should expect to get fruit. Okay, so now it's February. And all the good fruit that you wanted is gone, but you still got fruit hanging from the tree. Right? That's what you want to remove. If you leave that fruit on the tree, not only is it the rind gets or the fruit inside, it's not good to eat. So, but what it's doing is the tree doesn't care whether you get good fruit or not. The tree only cares about its next generation. So it does fruit to get seeds inside the fruit, and hopefully the seed will end up somewhere where a new tree will grow. Okay, so I lost track. What was I talking about? Yeah. Well, when to take it off. So if you leave the fruit on the tree, not only is that an attractant for the rats, but it suppresses the next crop. Why should I produce a whole lot of fruit when there's already fruit on the tree? Remember, it's not doing this for you to have something to eat. It's doing it to make babies. So it says, well, I'll just put out a few. So somewhere around, remember these are arbitrary months, but a couple of months after your harvest season is over with, you should remove all the fruit. And I might add, you should also toss it in the recycle bin and not leave it there for, make it even easier for rats and other things to eat them.
Perfect. And Gary asked, do you know the pH of the soil in the Coachella Valley? I did ask where he was from, but I haven't got a response yet to know what area.
The pH in the Coachella Valley is a little bit on the high side. Generally, plants like a pH between 6.5 and 7. When I was teaching fruit production at the College of the Desert and also soils, we would sample that, and that's the sand in kind of the middle of the desert. And the pH was around 6.2, just a little bit alkaline, but not so alkaline that it really interferes with anything. But a fertilizer like ammonium sulfate, which I think somebody mentioned that they use, the sulfate in the fertilizer pushes the pH towards acidity. So if you are using ammonium sulfate, then your pH would be expected to go down a little bit.
Okay. And he did mention he was in Thousand Palms, if that matters on the different areas of the valley.
No, that would be sand too.
Okay. Okay, that looks like all of our questions for today. Thank you so much.
you give them a send-off?
Thanks again for joining us today. We have another workshop on Wednesday, March 17th. We will be talking about solutions for common irrigation issues. I also want to quickly mention our desert-friendly landscape gardening book. It's available on our website at cvwd.org/store for $10. And we also have our planting calendar, 2021 planting calendar, and it's also available on our website for free at cvwd.org/publications. I hope you will join us next time, and I hope you will register for our next workshop on common irrigation solutions to those issues that you might have with your irrigation. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us again.